Good evening, IFL fans, and welcome to the Midweek Mayhem, where we dissect and analyze all of the data presented to us in advance of Week 11 of the Indoor Football League season. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your evening, checking out the goings-on of the league, as we, like I said, prepare for Week 11. And the second half of the season. For those of you who are new to the league or my channel specifically, welcome aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a big-time indoor football league fan. That is a passion that I've put into my current role as an IFL contributor over for Sports Coast to Coast, their Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in coverage of the IFL and its member teams. If you call yourself a fan of this league, it's definitely worth checking out. There's game previews, recaps, team-by-team roster breakdowns, pretty much any sort of updates that you need to be kept in the loop on. Sports Coast to Coast has you covered. So definitely check it out. You'll find my written version of those posts there as well. And I may have forgotten earlier, but let's announce it. It is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Let's get started. So it is here, Week 11. We have played through 10 weeks, 63 games, which means that we have 65 more regular season games to pick. We are 5 games below 500 on the record at the halfway point of the season, which means that we need to compile at least a record of 35-30 to be even on the win-loss ratio. Obviously, we want to do much better than that, particularly from the financial standpoint. So let's get right on to it and kickstart this second half. So Week 10, just like Week 9, we were right on the door, knocking on it, waiting for that winning week to happen with those final outcomes or two still pending. Unfortunately, with Sunday's game going far below its projected point total between Duke City and San Diego, we had to settle for another even week of 4 wins and 4 losses. But, as we'll find out in a little while, we got our first ever positive development of the season with a particular bet type. We will get to that in a little bit. I've also expanded on the year-to-date season trends a little bit. I did a little bit of digging around earlier this week, got my curiosity going on how I've been doing relative to each team, relative to each bet type. So we will definitely dive into that and figure out any insights that we can get from that. Tucson Sugar Skulls fans, you're probably either going to be really entertained or really mad at the findings that I came across. So we'll get through all that, and then we'll make a plan of attack for Week 11. We've got 6 games from which to make our selections this time around. We'll lead things off with a game on Friday, 4 on Saturday, and a standalone contest on Sunday evening that promises to be an exceptional game. And we'll again set some time to talk about that in just a little bit. Once we go through the single game bets, as always, we'll construct our 3-leg parlay of the week. We got our 9th attempt, cheeky little strike through of the first right there. And we're going to go for 2 straight of these. So hopefully luck is on our side. If last week was any indication, it might be turning around for us. And to wrap up the evening, we'll get to the futures forecast and trends, see the teams that are moving up and down, and try to figure out if there might be any value to be had somewhere with a particular team. So here are our Week 10 results from both a single game and parlay standpoint. The big news, if we didn't already hit upon it, is that our 3-leg parlay finally hit. After 2 months worth of trying to get one of these to go, we finally did it. We had the Wranglers and Pirates stay under 84.5. The Gunslingers beating Tulsa outright. And San Diego, how about the Strike Force? Still perfect on the spread at 8-0 to start 2024. Our $10 turned into a little under 55 as a result of those winning efforts there. So the parlay was good, as was the beginning of the week. We ended up getting our first couple predictions right, and then that Frisco game. Imagine taking a team with a lifetime win percentage above 80%, and they can't even pull through for you on a bet that's been 72% effective this year. Absolutely mind-melting stuff when you think about the numbers, but I've got to give full props to Green Bay. That was a spectacular, spectacular game. Max Myler, 3 touchdowns on the ground. E.J. Burgess, the rumbling Raven, 4 touchdowns of his own in his best game as a pro. Frisco just didn't have any answers to try to counter that. That game ending on a 29-0 Green Bay run, by the way. We also got wins on Sioux Falls and Jacksonville. That one was looking dicey in the fourth quarter, but a late touchdown from Sioux Falls and a kick return by Jacksonville thereafter got us across the finish line. And the Panthers, in an unusually high-scoring contest against the Arizona Rattlers, still managed to get the job done. They win 68-52, a game that featured a 24-0 Bay Area run through the end of the second and beginning of the third quarters. We suffered a tough loss with the Tulsa-San Antonio over pick. Again, it was just another one of those situations where we didn't really have knowledge of who definitively he was starting for the other team. We knew Castronova was starting for the Gunslingers, but turned out surprisingly to be Andre Sale for Tulsa. And you could tell that it was his first game of the season. Didn't really look comfortable in the pocket at all. A lot of his passes were missing high. That game ended up getting to 97, but it wasn't really even that close. The last touchdown of the game came with no time remaining to kind of save face a little bit, but wasn't enough to save us. And lastly, how about Vegas and Tucson? The last undefeated team in the Indoor Football League is no more. And I've got to tell you, I tried convincing myself all week after I made my selection that this was a trap line. Just somehow my gut instinct knew about it, but my brain refused to listen to it. But the Sugar Skulls played great. They took the lead into the first half. Some brilliant playmaking and coaching near the end. They forced the game to overtime. Gamble go for 2 in the overtime. Get Mike Jones to run it into the end zone 2. 51-50. The Sugar Skulls saving their season with about the best win that they'll probably have all season long. But again, we'll see what happens. So from a bet result standpoint, the spread bet shouldn't come as much of a surprise. We have equally as many underdog picks correct as we do favorites picks, given how lopsided that these spread results have been to the underdogs. But that's something that we're going to have to tap into a little bit more as we get more of these games going forward. See which of those dogs can get the job done for us. So we'll move on to the next and look at our yearly results. Our past few weeks, like we said, we've been treading water. 3 out of the past 4 weeks have been dead even as far as wins and losses go. Typically, the end game for that from the money standpoint is that you're going to be losing a little bit of money. The past couple weeks, perfect example of that, especially with the flat betting method. But as long as we don't have one of those abysmal weeks like we had in week 4, where we went 0 for 5 on our selections, that's an admirable position to be in, relative to how much worse that it could be. But like I said before, if there's any time to make a move back to the net gain territory, now is the time to do it. And that's what we will be hoping to do. And a look at some of our year-to-date results from both a money standpoint and a return on investment standpoint. We've been pretty much around that negative 10% since that disastrous outing, the winless week 4, which could go down in infamy unless we make a charge at the end. So for the year-to-date results in a general point of view, overs and underdogs remain really profitable plays. Overs on the full season, 55.6% win rate, and they are actually a much higher clip since week 3, because remember, the first 2 weeks started 8-0 to the under. So that really goes to underscore how much of a heater that these overs have been on for the past couple months. With games completed last week, all 16 teams have at least 3 games to the over. And because of that, we're going to get some skewed results to help us identify some outliers for teams that have disproportionately a lot of overs compared to unders. For instance, Frisco 7-1 to the over, including each of their last 7. And Quad City, San Antonio, and Sioux Falls are all 3 of them are 6-2 to the over, with Quad City notably hitting the over in each of their last 6. With the spread betting, underdogs have a similar lead. There is one push in there from the Week 9 game between Northern Arizona and Bay Area that the margin of victory wound up right on the spread total. So that explains the slight difference in win rate, but it's still equally as effective as a bet. With us having half a season of sample size now, we can pick apart who's doing well on the handicap and who is not. So on the latter side, the Pirates and the Rattlers, the 2 teams that competed in the United Bowl 3 years ago, ironically enough, the 2 worst teams against the spread in the IFL right now, with both sitting at 2-6. We touched upon San Diego remaining unbeaten against the spread, and Green Bay has the second best spread record at 6-2. There is a slight home field advantage on the spread, 29 wins, 25 losses, and the push. And from a money line standpoint, favored teams are still dominating at a really good clip. We're at a 71-72% win rate now. The underdogs were able to steal a few games in week 10. And if we were to bet all of the favorites on DraftKings only, we'd be looking at a return on investment at a clip less than 10%. And 34-29 straight up is the record for our home teams. Now, this is the addition that I was talking about a little bit earlier. I was curious to see which teams I was either projecting pretty well or struggling with. And that one that pops off the page right away is that I have not picked a single Tucson Sugar Skulls game correctly all season long. It's almost June, people. What am I even doing here? But in all seriousness, it's just, some teams are difficult to evaluate, really, regardless of the angle that you take. So it definitely is really insightful to see, all right, I'm good with some teams, but there are other teams where I might have to take a little bit closer of a look to really ensure that the pick that I'm making does make sense. Tucson's definitely one of those teams. Duke City and Green Bay are also troublesome, as are the Oilers. They are 2-6, but my screen on the bottom right is obstructing the view of some of those other records. But the Pirates, Quad City, Sioux Falls, Each share a record of 6-2 across all of my bets in terms of win-loss. So very comfortable with those teams. Unfortunately, two of them are going to be on bye this week, with the Steam Wheelers and Storm taking the week off, as are the Jacksonville Sharks and Vegas Nighthawks. But this is just something fun that I figured I'd expose and see what we can learn from it. Now, time for my usual disclaimers. The lines and odds that we are going to be using, as you'll see later on, are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. Not all games have money line bets available. So for any of them that I don't, I have typically filled in the blanks after the fact on Thursdays, once ESPN Bet gets their lines up and running for the week. But again, I'm going to be using strictly ESPN Bet, I'm going to be using strictly DraftKings for my evaluation of my wagers. But the ESPN Bet information is there as well for those who either prefer that method or just want to have all the information complete all in one single central place. Like always, we're only doing this for curiosity and for fun. We are not doing this with the intent of making money. If we do happen to make a profit with our picks, it'd be a nice added bonus. But again, we're looking for some fun little wagers here to place. You're more than welcome to tail my bets if you are of age and in a legal jurisdiction where you can bet, but please do so responsibly. Have your limits. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if your loved one is having trouble with problem gaming, there's a lot of resources out there online, phone call, whatever, that you can refer to. Haveagameplan.org is the example that I put right there. That's just one of many. So that will wrap it up for the disclaimers. Now, let's get into our picks for week 11. And we will start off with our Friday game, which is the third meeting of the season between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Iowa Barnstormers. Interestingly enough, the first and only meeting to take place in Des Moines at the Wells Fargo Arena. The spread is 9.5 points favoring Green Bay. Slight difference in spread odds depending on which side you take. The over-under is set at 80.5. The money line is Green Bay minus 380, and Iowa is quadruple your money at plus 300 if you're brave enough to take that pick. And this is just an amazing time for this game to take place. Green Bay literally just handed Frisco their worst loss in franchise history. Iowa has covered in each of their last 5 games and honestly should be on a 3-game winning streak right now. They just got really unlucky standing in the middle of a Kyle Kaplan heater in that Steam Wheeler game. I mean, the guy knocks down a field goal to begin the quarter, a 50-yarder midway through, and then a 49-yarder at the death to give his team the victory. That's good kicking for sure. Full credit to Kaplan. But from a Barnstormer standpoint, that's just simply unlucky. The team is playing well right now, is what I'm trying to get at. And I'm a little bit surprised that this point total is not a little bit higher, given the recent offensive outbursts that we've seen. But in looking at the numbers, it makes a little bit more sense. From Green Bay's side, even with their 67-38 win over the Fighters last week, which combined for 105 total points, their average game still only averages about 76 points per game. And on the Iowa side, if you take out both of their games against the Quad City Steam Wheelers, which inherently requires a different type of ball game, the average point total stands about the same at 76 points. We've seen both prior meetings hit the under at this number, so that is going to be my play here, especially with Green Bay being on the road. This is only their third road game of the season, by the way. I think they'll try to default to a more grinded out 42-24 type of game where they've already beaten Iowa twice, kind of in that mold. They were 35-24 victors in the opening week and then 40-33 winners in the second meeting, which was also at the Rush Center. But it is dangerous taking the under at this number. It is relatively low and is the lowest point total of this week. But I'm going to trust Green Bay 3-5 to the under. Last week's game presented a much different scenario for them. I think this is where we kind of get things back to the Green Bay that we love/hate to see. So play Green Bay, Iowa, under 80.5. The game to lead us off on Saturday. This is a 7:05 Eastern kickoff. The Tulsa Oilers making the trip to Lowell, taking on the Massachusetts Pirates, who are 10-point favorites. The over-under is set at 82.5. No money line bet is available. And where both teams in the Green Bay, Iowa game are coming in extra hot, Tulsa and Massachusetts are in some pretty serious midseason slumps right now. Tulsa's only got one win in their last 5. The Pirates only have one win in their last 4. And neither team is anywhere close to 100% health right now. The Oilers just put Jared Ware Jr. on injured reserve, effective as of yesterday/today. Whereas the Pirates have injury concerns of their own as well. Isaac Zico is on injured reserve. Eugene Ford is on injured reserve. Alejandro Benefield was unable to complete last week's game against the Wranglers, so his status is up in the air. So there's going to be a lot of missing pieces to this game. And because of that, my decision for this is another easy one, even though it's a little bit of a contrarian one. I think this game is going to struggle to see either team get to 40 points. Barring some special teams or defensive nonsense, this should be a game that winds up somewhere around the 40-34 range. Something around there. Because the Pirates' ceiling on offense is nowhere near as high without Isaac Zico, let alone potentially without Alejandro Benefield. The under has hit in this mark in each of their last 3 games, I believe, with their games at Sioux Falls, at Iowa, and then the game against Northern Arizona. So unless somebody else in that receiving core like Thomas Owens or Teo Redding or maybe even Lex Rosario for the Oilers, if they step up and have a monster game, it's possible this could go over. But that's really asking a lot, especially for 2 teams that aren't exactly in prime form right now. So this game is going to be ugly. It could even be uglier than the game preceding it. But I do like this play, taking the under at 82.5. We have 3 games with a 9:05 kickoff on Saturday. The first one listed, the Duke City Gladiators, winless on the season, hoping that first win comes in Glendale, taking on the Arizona Rattlers, who are favored by 14.5, with the over-under set at 87.5. No money line bet available for this one on DraftKings. And Duke City, it's been rough for them. It really has. They'll have moments where they look really good, where they're on the precipice of victory, as we saw a couple weeks ago in the San Antonio game. But they also have moments where they just look completely lost out there, completely tripping over themselves with the turnovers in particular. Joey Mancuso himself was responsible for 5 turnovers in last week's loss against San Diego. And that was after a pretty close to masterclass performance against the Gunslingers. So we've kind of seen the entire range of what Joey Mancuso can do. This is a game where I'm expecting him to do a lot better than surrender 5 turnovers in the same game. And I'm hesitant on Arizona for a couple reasons. One is because that spread is a really, really big spread. I know it's Duke City. I know they can bottom out at any given moment. But that's just a tough spread to make. Never mind for a team that's 2-6 against the spread this season. Which, if there's any time to back the Duke City Gladiators for a bounce-back performance, I think it could be this game. It's been a historically rough series for them the past couple years, but something along the lines of 48-37 gets the job done for us. So that is going to be my pick. I foresee a bounce back with offensive efficiency taking care of the football. And Arizona's defense is an attackable unit. They did give up 68 to Bay Area last week. I'm not expecting 68 again this week for sure, but if Duke City can get us to around the 40-ish point range, I feel pretty good about this. So we're going to take the road dog, getting 2 touchdowns plus the hook. Second game of the 9 o'clock window, the San Antonio Gunslingers taking their show on the road against the reigning league champion Bay Area Panthers. The home side laying 9. Over-under is our highest of the season at 106.5. San Antonio is plus 300 straight up, whereas Bay Area is minus 380. This one is going to be so much fun. And what makes it fun is that I have genuinely no idea how this game is going to look from a point scoring standpoint. Because it seems like all season we've been waiting for that kind of lull performance where the Gunslingers, where, like, for whatever reason, something's not clicking, but they've scored 50-plus points in 7 out of 8 games. And the one game they didn't was at Vegas. So their performance is certainly no fluke. Castronova even proved that in last year's NAL run with Jacksonville. He is making a very strong case for MVP and probably the best indoor football quarterback in the world right now. For that reason, why are you giving his team 9 points? I know it's the Panthers. I know they're a great team. I know they're at home. But San Antonio plays a style of football really similar to the Indiana Pacers in the NBA right now, where defense be darned. The name of the game is scoring points, and the Gunslingers do that better than any other team in the IFL right now. I do hesitate with picking a point total here, so I'm going to default to San Antonio spread. This should cover me, whether the game winds up 60-53 or 50-43. And both outcomes I see an equal chance of happening. Bay Area proved that they want to be a defensive-oriented team, but they can engage in shootouts if need be. But as long as San Antonio can continue putting up points at the rate that they are, while taking care of the football and remaining efficient on offense, this has to be the play. So I'm going to take the points again. Another road team that I'm backing on Saturday night. All right. Other 9:05 game, the Tucson Sugar Skulls and the Northern Arizona Wranglers. Again, a scenario where we have teams meeting for the third and final time this season. The Wranglers coming back home getting 8.5-point favorites. The over-under has been set to 88.5. The Sugar Skulls are plus 260, and the Wranglers are minus 325. And if you couldn't tell already from what we've talked about before, apparently I know nothing about the Tucson Sugar Skulls. Whether I've picked their spreads or over-unders, there's always been some twist somewhere that's caused me to get the bet wrong. And when you go 0 for 7 when picking games that involve a specific team, you just want to see one dang bet go through the hoop. So there really isn't too much analysis on this one. I've got to take the Wranglers at minus 325. I hate doing this. The profit-making part of me hates doing this. But I have to throw money aside here and say there are some wrongs that have to be righted. This is a game that Northern Arizona absolutely should win. They've won each of the past 2 games against the Sugar Skulls. Interestingly, those wins came by 3 and 6 points. So Tucson at plus 8.5 might have a little bit of value to it and a far better payout. But again, with my lack of success picking Sugar Skulls games, I just want that 0-7 to become 1-7. And if Tucson actually happens to get this win here, then good for them. Again, Billy back, do your worst. But my pick here, the Wranglers at minus 325 to advance their record to 6-3, further solidifying themselves in the Western Conference playoff picture. Sunday's game, what a way to end Week 11. The Frisco Fighters and San Diego Strike Force. This game is about as close to a pick'em as we are going to get. The odds makers have made Frisco the paper favorite by a point. The over-under is 97.5, and whichever side of the money line you take, you're laying a dime on the dollar. There are so many ways to look at this game. And both teams, from a betting standpoint, have angles at this where that bet could be really, really attractive. Whether you're looking at San Diego's 8-0 against the spread record and looking at that San Diego +1, or if you're looking at Frisco 7-0 to the over in each of their last 7 games, taking the over, either one presents a fine opportunity to take advantage of those season-long trends. The one that I'm going to go with, though, is actually the over at 97.5. I just think back to the last time that these two teams played. It was last year in Frisco, around this time last year, actually, with largely the same supporting cast of characters. And the game had 94 points in the first half. I'm not expecting anywhere near that total again. That would just simply be too easy of a no sweat bet type of deal. But I think both of these teams are going to try to light up the scoreboard, especially with San Diego getting some key pieces back. Marquise Hoodie Rogers and Arthur Jackson have served their 3-game suspensions in full, resulting from the fiasco when they played Bay Area for the second time. So that just gives Nate Davis more weapons and San Diego options to rotate their receivers around throughout the game. For Frisco, it's going to be tough to catch up. And as we've seen in a few games this year, the Fighters' defense can be attacked, and it can be had for high 40s, low 50s. Heck, even Green Bay proved that the 60s are in the cards for playing this team. There's a little bit of hesitation when it comes to the availability of TJ Edwards. His status still remains up in the air, being evaluated on a week-to-week basis. But with Trip Harrington under center, I know he was forced into a one-dimensional attack last week, but those past couple games where he put up 62 and 68 points, if Frisco can get that running game going and open up that pass game to where Harrington can have success, that's just going to work wonders for this wager right here. So, again, this over has hit in each of Frisco's last 7 games. I'm fully expecting the same scenario to play out here. So give me Frisco San Diego over 97.5. And now it is time to make our bid, the 3-leg parlay of the week. And we are going to try to make a second winning treble in a row. I can't recall off the top of my head if we had consecutive winning parlays last season, but it'll be interesting to see. I'll have to follow up and see what I find on that front. But in any event, my first pick involves the Friday game, and it is taking Iowa at home to cover on the road. This is the classic scenario of something's got to give here, regardless of which side of the spread that you're taking. Green Bay's 6-2. Iowa's covered each of their last 5. And I do like Iowa as the home team to cover at this number. In both prior meetings, they were in a position to get a cover. They were unable to backdoor cover in the first meeting, but they did backdoor cover in the second. So these games generally hover around that margin of victory. So underdogs have been successful, home dogs have been successful, and we get a nice little enhanced payout with -105 instead of -110. So that is my first leg. The second leg is going to be Duke City, Arizona under 87.5. To be honest with you, this kind of is a little bit of a hedge on the Duke City plus 14.5 pick, where this essentially protects us in the event that Duke City just bottoms out again. But if we have a game like 50-35, that gets us across. So it's an interesting scenario. I do think it is among the best over-under bets out there to include on some more of your exotic bets, such as parlays or round robins. So that will be leg number 2 on Saturday. And if those 2 picks hold, it'll come down to Saturday's pick, where I will be going against San Diego on the spread, taking Frisco -1. Another scenario where we get a -105 leg in there. And there's another stat here that I may not have mentioned in the single game analysis, but the Fighters have never lost consecutive games in franchise history. This game will certainly be a test to see if that statement holds up, but I'm going to operate on the hope that it does. The Fighters are a good team. You'll know that they'll want to bounce back after getting bounced by 29 a week ago. So it makes for a really interesting game. It's really a toss-up. There's no right or wrong. The only right is that it's going to be entertaining to the fans regardless of which side you take. So we get a really nice plus 627 payout potential there. Throwing $10 on it could give a max payout of $72.77. It is possible for the payout to be less than that if the first 2 legs hit and the Fighters win by exactly 1. But I guess perhaps that'll be a bridge that we cross when and if we get to it. Let's hope that it is a when rather than an if. So there's my 3-leg parlay. Iowa plus 9.5, Duke City, Arizona under 87.5, and Frisco Fighters -1. And now we take a look, wrap up the evening with our future selections, provided that they load up here for me. Maybe refreshing the page will help it. There we go. Oh. Try that again. Come on. Aha, okay. Thanks for bearing with me there. Not too much has changed in terms of the ordering. The most significant change, I would say, is the Green Bay Blizzard, who, after their performance against Frisco last week, they are now plus 1,000 to win the IFL championship. Prior to that win, they were plus 1,500. So pretty significant change there. We also have the Tucson Sugar Skulls leapfrogging the reeling Tulsa Oilers following their victory over the Vegas Nighthawks a week ago. And if you feel the need to pick Duke City, throw $1 on them. If they concoct a miracle of God, that's a $1 into a $100 proposition there. But all in all, the ordering and the tiers haven't really changed all that much. But we do have a full half season's worth of games left to be played. Who will be the teams to rise and fall and ultimately make up our 8-team field for when the postseason begins in mid-July? So that is going to do it for tonight's edition of Wager Wednesday. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to go over some of this stuff with me. And I hope you all have a great evening. If you do test your luck, all for you. And I will see you at the cashier. Good night, everybody.